So we were just at dinner right now, talking a little bit about expectations our dads put on us, expectations we had going into marriage, expectations we've got of our kids and what we think they might do. I wonder, what expectations did you have going into marriage?
Well, I think my expectations were to be a provider. My father, just watching him over the years and how he really operated as a provider, he was the hardest working man I've ever seen. And taking care of my mom and taking care of us. And the Bible tells us very clearly, you know, if you find a wife, you find a
good thing.
So you take care of that good thing.
That's exactly right. Write that down, Charles.
Straight wisdom right there. Yes, sir.
Yeah. That's amazing. What about you?
So I don't, you know, growing up in a family with small business, granddad, uncle, dad, everybody was doing that. And so that was just the way forward. So I didn't know exactly what I was going to do when I got through school, but I knew I was going to work hard. And same kind of deal, you know, saw everybody work, saw everybody take their family to church. And that was just the example put before me. You know, I think we were mentioning this at dinner a bit ago, but when I got to college, was the first time I really realized that how rare that was. I remember walking around my freshman hallway and just getting to know the guys on the hall with me and realizing how rare it was to have examples like that in your life, and all of a sudden the weight of responsibility, understanding that, man, you had been given something, been shown something, and that wasn't something that was really commonplace. It was really rare air. So I remember feeling that early on, 18, 19, that was just a blessing that I don't think I really valued it as much as I probably should have, you know, in high school especially.
Yeah. Did you talk about the expectations you were having going in when you met your wife? I know you guys met.
Yeah, we talked a little bit. I think for us, the expectation, as Pastor said, I was to provide and my wife was to stay home with the kids, but I realized those were my expectations. And so my wife also wanted to work and do her career stuff. And obviously, I felt that drive and that need to provide financially and just as a source of strength for our family. And I think that came from watching my parents, because my dad was, I mean, he worked from earliest I can remember. He was going to work. He would wake up 3 o'clock in the morning. Oftentimes I would still be up. And then he'd come back home about 5, 6 o'clock. So, you know, he was working and providing, and that was my expectations. And
did you have to unlearn some of that stuff?
100% had to, 100%. I had to, you know, realize that, you know, that's one part of what I'm supposed to be doing as a dad. And there's other areas that I need to be serving, and serving my wife well, and you know, and loving her well, and so that was definitely something that needed to change.
Yeah, you're nodding. What are you thinking?
Well, you know, as I listen to him, I'm thinking that, you know, our children see us and we're that role model. I saw my dad, and I was that role model, and my son, you know, as he has just gotten married, I was that role model. He's seen me get up and provide and go to work. And I've said this at dinner. As hard as we do it, we're not perfect. Right. As hard as our parents done it, they weren't perfect. And we continue to evolve. Because my wife was a career, she's an educated woman, wanted her career. And I was not one of those going to say, hey, you stay home. The queen wanted to do what she wanted to do. Hey, let's make this work. Yes, sir. And we did. We did, but one of the things I always kept before my son, be a man at what you do. Be a godly man at what you do. And that's what we do. Training our children to be responsible and accountable as we try to live our lives, as my father did before me. That's what we do. It's not easy.
When you were saying that to your son, what do you mean by be a man? What were some of the things that you were thinking?
You know, because what Pastor Coop said is that a lot of kids don't see that, especially in the inner city. Don't see a father taking care of their children the way that they really should. You know, even when I was growing up, it wasn't a lot of fathers that were in the household. So, even my son's friends would be drawn to me. Even to this day, they're sometimes drawn to me because they see that example. They come to me for advice, and being able to tell my son, be a man in the way you handle your responsibilities. When he was a little boy, and if I'd done something to him, done something for him, I'd say, son, now you remember this, when you have a son, you take care of him just like daddy took care of you. Mm-hmm. We drop that knowledge. We train up a child in the way it should go. That's our responsibility as men of God. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about the world, because today these kids have a completely different culture.
Right.
But we're ambassadors to the King.
Mm-hmm. Charlie, what about you? What was some of the things you watched your dad doing growing up that you thought, I'm taking this into marriage, or I'm taking this into the way I'm raising my kids?
Yeah, my dad was a phenomenal dad. He was present. I think coming into marriage, I knew that Amy and I were going to have kids one day. I didn't know, when, or we didn't have it all planned out, but obviously God had different plans there too. And I look back on my upbringing, and my dad to this day he's just a leader. And he's just got that, God-given gift to lead. And really what that looked like in my home was serving. And that is how it plays out in my family now. I feel like that's my number one. My kids are young, 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and it's as physically taxing right now.
That's right.
As it's probably ever going to be. And as they grow, it becomes emotionally and mentally challenging. And but right now it's physically, and so I just bust my tail, and that's really, that's just kind of instilled in me. I think about a book that was recommended to me by Lee McDermott years ago called Fathered by God by John Eldridge. I recommend it. And the beginning of it starts with John telling the story of going to Alaska. He's kayaking with humpback whales, and the guy's like, hey, you want to go see some grizzly bears or where they feed or whatever? He's like, I guess. And, well, they're asleep right now. You're not going to see them. But anyways, he describes walking through this path in this, like, mossy bog. And there's, it'd be impossible to walk where they're walking, but grizzly bears had walked this path for centuries, and their paw prints were just pressed down into this moss. Wow. And John Eldridge was saying this experience was kind of like holy, because these grizzly bears just followed the path that was set before them. And that's like the number one, I feel like the number one calling as a father is to pave the path, illuminate the path that you want your kids to go down by walking it yourself,
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, you can't fake integrity, right? So that's the thing that's so precious, that's so unique. Is I think about my dad, and was a present, connected. I'm the oldest of 5 boys, so there was a lot of testosterone that made its way out in different ways. Some of us were more artistic, some of us were more sporty, but part of his role was just to pay attention to what was going on in the heart of us, and then how do I connect with that? How do I speak to that? You were talking about, okay, my son, he needs to support this team. He needs to be connected to this thing that matters most to me. I wonder, open question for the table, what are some of the things that you get into marriage with some expectations, but then you start to pivot, you start to realize that this isn't a formula, this is a real woman with real feelings, emotions, dreams, expectations of her own. How did you guys navigate some of that early years of marriage? I know there's a variety of lengths of marriage here. What were some of the ways that you started to really figure things out in the early years?
Well, I'll jump in real quick and say that, my wife, her upbringing and my upbringing very different in the way that home did conflict. Like in my house, we were just out front. If you feel it, you say it. If you say it the loudest, you usually win. And that was not the home my wife grew up in. And so when we had to work through conflict, when you have conflict, that's part of marriage. And I'm feeling it, I want to say it. And if she's feeling it, she's not saying it.
Wow.
And so just trying to figure out how to navigate that, how to understand who she is and understand that she wants to process. And so that was a big, big part of, dating and engagement in early part of marriage. It's, still something you work through now, but we've got a decade plus under our belt. And I feel like that was one of the things we laugh at now, looking back, is just how we, especially in the early days, did conflict. That's probably a big part.
What are you thinking? There's a story there. I can see it behind your eyes.
So I think about when I first got married, I was 21. I got married very young, and I was still trying to become an adult. And so I didn't know what expectations to have, but like most 21-year-old men, I just I expected and anticipated so much sex. and I would tell anybody that's getting married for sex, it's like buying a Boeing 747 for the peanuts. You know, it's like you're getting way too much for way too little. And the fact of the matter is,
I'm gonna have a drink of water on that one.
I've realized the further I get into marriage, it's there are most days where I give everything I've got, you know, energy-wise and time-wise. You know, I've sacrificed things that I want to do for fun. I've put it all aside, and I get nothing in return physically, and that's okay. You know, that is the purpose of marriage is not for happiness; it's for holiness. You know, and that's a. Y'all text me tomorrow. When
I just think about all the single guys that are going to lean in on this conversation. They're like, what?
Yeah, I'm talking to myself more than I am y'all, but that's just the fact of the matter is those expectations, you realize, they change and you got to pivot.
So for me, I feel like my wife and I, we've been married for 9 years and we've known each other for 20. So
wow.
So there's a lot of history there where I kind of know what she's thinking, she knows what I'm thinking. So as we were stepping into marriage, it was a lot of, I already know you pretty well, I know how you operate, I know, you know, what you like, what you don't like. And when we finally did start living in the same house, we kind of started to realize that I need to engage a lot more than I am engaging. And so that was something that we had to intentionally really work through. And I think part of that was, you know, you get married, you're so in awe with the person you're with, and you're just, you know, they can do no wrong. And so, you know, one of the rhythms that we try to implement is just staying in awe of each other, and you know, what is my wife, recognizing what my wife's doing that's where she's walking into her calling or her gifting, and that's keeping my heart alive for her and to pursue her, and hopefully, you know, we get to reciprocate what we want. So that's just one example for us.
Well, you and Corey are big on rhythms and trying to live with some intentionality. What are some of the things that have been helpful for you?
Well, I don't think it mattered quite as much early on because you just have free time. You don't realize it, but you're just like, man.
That's where we are. It's just, what do you want to do?
Yeah,
whatever you want to do.
Fantastic. And you think you're busy, and we've always kept a full schedule. But I think, you know, you had 1 kid, and then 2 kids, and then 3 kids, and then, you know, ministry life and all the things. And so, you know, we've found that for us, the most simple thing is to add a meal a week, a Sabbath meal. So Friday nights for our house is a sacred time. You know, we talk about Friday night meals. Our kids aren't playing sports on Friday nights yet, so Friday night meals at our house, and that's when we're gonna, you know, pull out a nice piece of meat on the grill. It's where we're gonna sit down and all be at the same place. We're gonna have guests over to our house. We sing songs, and we have little rituals that we do, and it's fun, and we make memories there. We close the meal by taking communion. It's been something that actually we started doing during COVID. We were all home a lot, and we had to take that meal to another level. And so we started doing communion at the end of that meal, and then we literally pray over every person at the table. And now it's like one of the sweetest things ever. My kids expect it. I started by me as a dad just praying over my family, and now it's now evolved to, at the end, all my kids pray over me, and I'm just like a mess. You know, we were talking about earlier, like having daughters and just, you know, getting emotional, but my kids are praying over me, and it's super cool. So that's one of the major rhythms that we do.
That's amazing.
Sure.
Did y'all do anything like that?
Well, let me say this, because I'm listening and taking all this in, because you guys got young babies. Mine are grown now. We've been through the sports. They've been to college, both of them athletes, and now they're homeowners and married and moving. My son's married and moving on with his life. But the growth that you have between a man and a woman, dwell with that woman according to knowledge. You got to get to know her. That's your queen. You got to know what she wants. And that don't mean you're gonna be perfect, but you've got to communicate. That's one of the things I am. I'm a communicator. We're gonna talk. You know, I'm gonna wake up. Hey, look, this is what's on my heart. You know, I'm gonna
I'm the same way. I'm the same way.
Because I want to know what's on your heart.
Right.
I can't fix it if I don't know. And the same thing with my kids. You know, I drove my daughter to school, and they didn't want Mama to drive because she was always late. So I always had to drive them to school. And I would talk to them. And to this day, I still talk to them. But that's what we do. We grow by getting to know each other. And in marriage, it's essential. It's essential because the thing is, those kids gonna leave, and she gonna be right there.
That's right.
Right.
And you've got to keep it real and 100, what you want, what you expect. And if you're doing it together, equally yoked, the common denominator is we want to honor God, back to the holiness. Back to the holiness. Everything else gonna fall in place. I don't care if it's sex, I don't care if it's vacation, but you got to love on her and you got to treat her like a queen.
It's a good word right there.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think there's moments where one or both of you forget that.
Amen.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir.
I know there's been moments Danny and I did 2 years long distance, right? So just texts, just FaceTimes. There were some people that did it before technology, don't know how they did that. But we thought all we do is communicate, right? It's texts all day, just thinking about you. What are you up to now? What about now? What about now? What about now? And then we get married and we realize we don't know how to communicate at all. We know how to live 2 different lives and inform one another, and that's not communication.
Yeah.
That's just information.
Yeah.
And I think for us, that was such a
you
big
guys
thing to learn.
Are different.
Right.
Because we talked on the phone. You know, we talked on the phone and fall asleep. You still there?
No, you hang out. No, you hang out.
You know, we talk. I watch my son and I watch my daughter and they're texting. He can be in the room with his wife and texting each other instead of communicating.
Yeah.
That's it.
You know, sitting there and talking, getting to know her. He just built him a house, and I said, son, you got to know the sounds of your house. As you lay there, you got to know the sounds of your house, just like you know your wife. You've got to pay attention, and you've got to be intentional with your wife. And your wife has to be intentional with you, because guess who's watching? Them babies. Them babies. I watch my dad and I watch my mom, and I always had this in my mind. I want to treat, because I was a daddy's girl. I mean, I was a mother's boy. I love my mama. You know, I didn't do the mama jokes. You talk about my mama's on. Yeah, I didn't do that. You know, and I always said I want to treat my wife the way I want to see my mom treated.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's amazing.
I think for me, one way I try to kind of implement that is I know I've always got to slow down, because a lot of times I can be, let's go, you know, let's do this, let's do that.
You got a schedule, you got an agenda.
Yes, I want to go play basketball with my team. I want to go on the tennis court. I want to do whatever, but I'm staying busy, and you know, not to mention work, but oftentimes I know I need to slow down. And you know, one of my mentors told me that intimacy is speed, and so you have to, you know, if you're able to have that space where you kind of, life can slow down, you can be one heartbeat like you were talking about before, and really connect with each other, and also that I feel like that's how I can learn and know how to serve my wife, is, you know, what are her true needs, and if I don't intentionally slow down, I know that I struggle with that. So we've designated some time on Saturday mornings.
Okay.
It's our time to slow down.
Yeah.
And let's see where we're at. Let's talk. Let's pray. Let's think through, plan. You know, what's going on? Where are you at? What do you got? How can I help you? How can I serve you? And I think that's paid off for us a lot.
How's that looking with a young child, a young son? That Saturday morning, I'm thinking like, okay, someone else watching him, or you?
Well, there's a few tricks that we've learned to be able to kind of contain him.
Yeah.
One of them we talked about earlier was grandparents. There you go.
There you go. There you go.
Hand them off, and they're not babysitters; they're grandparents. But you know, we need that space.
Was that for me?
That was for you. Yeah, we didn't move up here to have the babysit. But,
You're on record with that one.
It helps. But we know we need that space and that time to stay connected and stay at the same speed. And a lot of things have changed from not having kids to having kids, obviously. But you know, it's been a blessing.
What were some of the biggest changes for you and Amy when you stepped into parenthood?
Yeah. So I'm thinking about that. When, from a rhythm standpoint, we were married. So I've been married almost 12 years, and the first 7, we did it by the book. You know, we had a weekly date night, and we had these things called sync meetings, which is like synchronized SYNC. I told my home group about that back in that day, and they were like, "Does that mean you meet at the kitchen sink?" And so no, synchronized. And so we talk about our schedule and our finances, and we'd go through the gamut, and it was great. And then year 7.5, we had our daughter that we adopted come into our family, and it was incredible. But everything changes. It wasn't like, for us, it wasn't this gradual, like, hey, here's a newborn, you gradually kind of step into parent. It was like, from go, here's, she's ready to roll. And it was a big adjustment for her. And we're super proud of her and how she's adjusted. But, still to this day, it's just hard. And
Amen.
With now, the thing that we do from a rhythm standpoint is we just co-labor together. That's just the season. Life is about seasons, and that's the season we're in. We occasionally get to go on a date or a trip, overnight and that sort of thing, but it's not like it was those first 7 years, It's a lot different.
Does that stress you out? You trying to get a plan together to try and move through that? Or?
Yeah, it's definitely it brings more challenges, but at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest things men and women desire out of marriage is the feeling that they're cherished. And I just do anything and everything I can to make sure Amy knows that she's cherished, And it looks a lot different than it did, and it's not as impressive as it was. But I don't know, right now, I think about the analogy of like going to the gym and the movement of like bench press. Most things in life that are most important aren't like complex. Like bench press is not hard to learn to do. You just gotta have strength. It's just heavy. And that's how it is right now. You just gotta be strong. You just gotta hang in there.
You get stronger doing it over and over and over and over again. That's a really good analogy.
But remember, technique matters.
That's true.
I don't care if you're playing golf.
That's true.
Or hitting a baseball. Technique matters. And putting that technique to work, you got the Bible. You got the greatest book to teach you to love, and that's what we're talking about. We're talking about just adoring your wife, because here's the thing. My wife and I, March the 3rd, we'll be married 32 years.
Wow.
32 years. Before we had kids, it was just us, and we just really enjoyed each other. What I did not want to do is lose that in raising kids.
Right.
And that's what you can't do, guys. You can't lose each other, because that's why you see so many people have divorce after the kids are grown, because they lose each other. And keep that communication and know her, and allow her to really know you. And a lot of times as men, we've got to be vulnerable. We've got to be able to show our hurts and our pains. And the truth is that you came to her with some hurts and pains. She came to you with some hurts and pains.
Right.
And that healing is going to be found in the unity of love it's just centered in Jesus Christ. And that's the beauty of that relationship, that you love her like that, as Christ loved the church.
So what do you do about moments that you're not on the same page? About little things, big things, life moves, we're moving cities, we're moving countries, we're moving states. How do you do that? You're smirking, you've got answers already. I'm
letting somebody else talk.
Because I want to hear it.
Because guys, we moved from Atlanta, and God called me in the ministry, and I started preaching, and my father's associate pastor, and it was a hard thing because I didn't want to leave Atlanta. I didn't want to, and Kimball didn't want to move to North Carolina, and she just trusted God. She trusted the leadership, and it wasn't easy, and by no means think that it's going to be, just like what you were talking about, the hard things. But see, bench pressing is that way. Sometimes you going for that last rep and you got to push through it. And sometimes in marriage, there are situations where you've got to push through it.
Yeah.
And she's got to trust you. There's no relationship relationship here that's going to be a lasting relationship if it's not built on trust. Right. And as a leader, you got to be trustworthy.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, you know, Corey and I, there's plenty of things, but I can remember we were dating, and I was already in ministry. You know, I was a youth pastor, and she was a 19-year-old college student, and she was dating a youth pastor. And I remember we were at that place where it was like, all right, we've been dating for a while now, and it's time for us to make a decision. Because if we go any further down this path and you don't want to be married to a pastor, then we're gonna, you know, probably be sinful in the way we're dating, you know? Right. And I remember having that dialogue, and it was really one of those make or break moments. And it was, you know, trusting that I was putting my heart out there, trying to be vulnerable, and I wanted to be with her, and I wanted her to say yes. But at the end of the day, at that moment in time, she was basically saying yes to, I want the trend line of being a pastor's wife. Mm-hmm. And that was something at 19, you know, I don't know that most college girls are ready to go down that road, and that was a big ask. But I think that conversation really developed that trust for the future in a lot of other places, you know. And so we've been together now for over 15 years, but that was the first real moment where it was like, okay, we might not be on the same page here, but I had to kind of, you know, put that out there.
Yep.
So
you need to learn from that over time, right? It's the, okay, we did it once, we can do it with the
Well, that was hard, and now, you know, we just have to get on the same page about which way the dishes need to go in the dishwasher. That's her way.
That does not stop.
Once you dealt with this, you can handle that. That's way
hard. That doesn't stop. I still ain't learned how to put the dishes
I've been trained on how to fold a shirt many years. So anyway, but those things are easier after you
But I know for a fact there's some people watching this, and they're the ones with the dishwasher, and she can't touch it. Like, I know there's husbands out there, they may be sitting in this circle right now, but it's like...
Is that a lesson for you, Finn?
Yeah,
is that what you're saying?
And that's the thing that breaks, that's the thing that can sometimes just spark a whole evening, right? It's not the, hey, we need to get on the same page because you spent $2,000 on this and you shouldn't have. It's, I wish you put the things back the way I want you to put the things back. And it's just the little things that compound over time. But I'm thinking about what you're saying, and it's the little words of affirmation, the little words of generosity, of consistency, that can compound interest towards actually love and trust and affection and all that sort of stuff.
100%.
Yeah, now those things are a joke now. Like those are things that we kind of just flirt with each other about now. But not at first, they weren't. They were the little things that just could blow a whole
That's a knife fight at the
beginning. Yeah.
So you're talking about dishwasher. My wife, she wants the dishes to be washed in the sink and then put in the dishwasher a certain way. So that was something that we definitely disagreed with, and we compromised, and I wash them and put them in the dishwasher.
I completely understand. You're still married, aren't you?
We're still married.
Wisdom cries out in the streets, and you're listening.
I'm listening. But no, as far as like not being on the same page on some bigger issues, and for me and our family, we have moved around a lot, probably 6 or 7 times since we've been married. And I think that's more of something that I had been driving, and something I had to realize that, you know, I'm driving this, and I love the adventure, I love change, I love new things, and I am not 100% serving my wife. This was earlier in our marriage with that, and you know, now, you know, we're more settled, and I think that, like I was saying before, being able to slow down and know her heart, and know what she needs allows me to be able to operate and move with the trust that, hey, these decisions I'm making are not just for me.
Right.
They're for us as a family, and so that was a big thing. And a big way that I think I've been trying to develop that trust is continually speaking life into her and into our family, and saying it out loud with words. And I grew up in a family like that. It was very, hey, I love you.
Affirming, yeah.
I'm gonna tell you I love you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you a hug. I'm gonna give you a kiss. Let me show you. And you know, I think me trying to implement that has, you know, just affirmed those things and where my heart is, and built that trust. You were talking about the consistency, but built the consistency and the trust that, hey, the decisions I make, you know I love you.
Now, was she raised in a family like that? So was she receiving of that?
Yes, she was. So that was, you know, just something that I think we discussed it. Like, hey, we want to make sure we're speaking life into each other, and not just, you know, when we're in our home, but outside of our home. And so, I don't want my wife to be at the butt of a joke or something like that, and me be part of that like joke, and then we get in the car and I find out like, oh, you didn't think that was funny, you know? So
that's just an example, right? That's never happened. That's never happened. It's never happened once.
Just an example.
Hypothetical.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's kind of how we've been able to navigate through just not always seeing eye to eye. It's just building that trust and her knowing that I'm for you.
I'll say for us, we have moved around a lot. We made a lot of big decisions, and any big decision we've made, we've always been in alignment.
Really? That's awesome.
I mean, and if we're not in alignment, then I'm just not making the decision. If at all possible, I'm delaying the decision. We're just not making it until we get in alignment. And that's something that I will try to do going forward, but that's not always the case. And I realize that there's times, hopefully, this doesn't happen, but there may be a time where I know that we need to do X, Y, Z, and Amy may not be in alignment, but I'm just going to pray really hard that she'll get in alignment.
How often does that normally take? And it's each circumstance is different, but getting on the same page, what does that look like for you guys?
Honestly, I'm not saying we're holier than thou, but any big decision is just like I guess it's the Holy Spirit moving, and it's just kind of, we get
brings
in
you together.
Yeah, that's one of the affirmations.
Yeah. I mean, we've moved to Atlanta, we've moved to Myrtle Beach, we've moved back from both of those places. We've done a lot of changes.
The upstate, man.
All roads lead back here.
We can't leave now.
I think that's a lot easier when you're yoked together.
Yeah.
When you're yoked together. In marriage, when you're pulling in the same direction, and you're yoked together, and that common denominators to honor God, even in your decisions, even in the authority. And guys, biblically, you have biblical authority to be leaders. And if she can respect that and understand, then you can make some great moves together. But again, you've got to carry yourself in such a way that commands respect.
That's right.
And integrity.
Yeah.
And character. And treat her, as you said, just treat her the way she deserves to be treated.
Yep.
She'll value that.
That's it.
And people talk about love, and love is an action word. Yeah. It's not one of those words you're gonna throw out just when you want to get busy. Yeah. It's just that word that you show her by the little things.
Yep. Right.
And sometimes we're not great at it. Just be honest.
Yeah.
And that's when, as men, we got to recognize when she letting you know, hey, you falling short. You need to step up your game.
That's it.
That you are hearing her.
I want to add one thing. You're talking about us not being on the same page with our wives, and you mentioned something that made me think about obedience. You did as well, being in alignment, but I feel like my wife knows when I'm being obedient to the Lord and when I'm not. So the tension is there when I'm not as obedient as I should be. And so, that's when, I got to make sure I'm getting up and I'm reading, and I'm having that humble spirit of, what does the Lord want from me to serve our family? And when she feels that and knows that, things get a lot better.
We're in a trend here, but it's a joy to be married to a wife that loves Jesus.
Amen.
Right.
And, just to think about, you've moved across the globe, you've moved across the state, you've, moved all over the world, but when you think about the facts, if you'll seek the Lord, it really is. I mean, I'm sure at some point my wife and I can have a big disagreement in this regard, but I can't think of one because of what you just mentioned, what you're saying. Like, if you've got the Lord, you're seeking His Word, you're praying, you're asking God for help, even on difficult decisions, you'll get to unity. You really will. And the Lord's not going to lead two people in separate directions like that. You're equally yoked. So that's a big deal.
And a big part of our story is Danny wasn't on the same page when we moved. She did not want to come, and it was like, well, there's a covenant and a ring, so you're coming with me whether you like it or not.
Is that how you played that?
I did, and then and it went down so well.
Hey, look, you're a real baller.
Listen, but the only
see that knot on your head.
But the only thing that kept me doing that, because that caused friction, right? That caused, you're talking about the joy of alignment. I know the pain of disalignment.
Yeah. Wow.
But the only thing that made that actually worthwhile was I had a word from God.
Amen.
God said, turn up, you need to get here. And when we get here, the first Sunday, we're in church, we're singing, and God speaks to Danny and just says to her, we didn't move for Finn. We didn't move for his ministry. We didn't move for his calling. I got you here for me and you. And it's like that uncorked a season of healing that I had to make a painful decision. And that's not because I was the hero, that's because I just knew if I don't put God first in this is going to take us in a trajectory we don't want to go.
You know what that is? That's leadership. That's leadership. And we happen to live in a culture where that is not always smiled upon.
Right. Yeah.
But somebody got to make the hard decisions. And when you're lined up here, sometimes everybody don't get the assignment. Everybody don't get the vision where God is leading you. But she trusted you enough to get here, and God brought confirmation to what he'd already put in your heart. That's the God we serve.
Wow.
Amen. Amen.
That's amazing.
You make me want to shout.
Well, that feels like a good note to end on there.
Yeah.
So, thanks, all, for just being here and sharing your stories, sharing your journeys. It's been so cool to hear about what God's done in each of us, in our marriages and our parenting.
It's great.
I felt like we were just getting started. I was ready.
We can get this thing
Yeah.
Baby.
That was perfect.